President Zuma's demand that he be granted immunity from prosecutions was rejected. This as opposition parties mobilized their members and the public for a national showdown and the debate of a motion of no confidence in President Zuma early next week. Meanwhile, opposition parties will meet on Monday. They're seeking to push forward the motion of no confidence in President Zuma, set to take place on February the 22nd. The EFF is also engaged in mobilizing people for a protest march aimed at forcing the president to step down. Well, for more on this, we crossed our presidential correspondent, Tshepo Ikaneng. He joins us from our Pretoria studios. Tshepo, good morning to you. So the pressure really mounting from all sides. Help us make sense of the latest developments.
Yes, indeed, the time is ticking and there's no more time left for the ANC leadership to actually break this stalemate. They have less than 48 hours to basically come out with a decision about the fate of President Jacob Zuma. There's talk that they have met the top six. Now they're back in Johannesburg and Gauteng, and they'll be making their way either late afternoon to Mahlamandlovu, the official residence of President Jacob Zuma. Obviously, the meetings are expected to continue again intensively tomorrow. But the conundrum that we've just heard is that whether to break the news, whatever deal will be reached in the next 48 hours, whether the officials will have the power to break the news to South Africans or they'll have to wait till next week Saturday. That's the National Executive Committee meeting of the ANC. As you are well aware that the top officials, 6 of them as leaders, they are not an official structure, they are just the leadership. They have to, whatever is agreed at Mahlamandlovu will have to be communicated to that structure, and a decision, final one, has to be taken by the NEC. Now this plays into the hands of the opposition, who have given the ANC up until Sunday to actually pronounce on the fate of President Zuma, and that's one of the major sticking points. We don't know really what is going to be the final outcome and how it's going to be communicated. With the anxiety growing, it seems next week Saturday will be too far long for other people, including those civil society organizations who are very much impatient about the outcomes of these talks. So we are waiting to hear what kind of a direction these talks will be taking, and within the next 48 hours we'll be able to have a hint as to what has been decided upon.
All right, so really what you're saying is that they're basically just sealing the deal, and we just have to wait to see what comes out of these latest round of talks.
Yes, I mean, from what we are hearing is that an agreement has been reached to the affirmative that he has to give way, but the issue is what is in for the president, what kind of assurances and guarantees as per his request are going to be arrived at. And obviously this is going to be debated amongst them and as the leaders, but they also have to solicit advice and some inputs from various factions. We must not take it for granted that the President Zuma does not enjoy a considerable amount of support within the NEC. He still has backers even in provinces such as KwaZulu-Natal. So whatever is debated here, I don't think it will only be left to officials. There still has to be a lot of deal making. We've also been told in good authority that some of the leading leaders from provinces are coming to Johannesburg to just being around the vicinity to be able to try to influence the talks and to really have first kind of information as to really what is the tone, what has been agreed to. So we're expecting a flurry of activities in the next few hours.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've alluded, Tshepo, to the fact that there are these alliances within the ANC, the Zuma camp, the Ramaphosa camp. So talk to us about the fact that by and large, top officials within the ANC has been kept out of the talks. So surely this must create some kind of anxiety within those inner alliances of the ANC.
Most definitely, their vested interests. We know that even the election of the NEC itself, it was split 50-50. Everybody wants to have a say. Many people want to have inside information about really what is really happening. But I think there is consensus really to respect the leadership of Ramaphosa and his team, including those who are not basically who are aligned to his faction, to really make sure that they delicately address these issues and they take the president into confidence, and whatever is debated there is going to be decided amongst them before it filters or maybe before it leaks I think there's also going to be a greater kind of a camp to avoid a similar incident when we saw the audio tape leaked from the Treasurer General Paul Mashatile about the contents of the discussion. So some, especially those aligned to President Zuma, are very much urging, and they really want to see as to whether these leaders are really committed to the spirit of making sure that there is that kind of a decorum in terms of making sure that these talks are confidential and that nobody uses his position to actually make sure that he gains some traction or try to influence the outcomes of the discussion when the talks are continuing. So it's greater care, and there's a lot of issues relating to emotions, and many people have vested interest, like I said, and it's just a waiting game.
Yeah, and the other aspect we can't forget is going back to the postponement of SONA. SONA is a significant event on the country's calendar. It's not just the pomp and ceremony. It's when, as a nation, we get to hear the government plan for the country, and through representatives in Parliament, we get to hold government accountable to those plans. So the day-to-day running of government programs of late, how are they being affected by this stalling?
The SONA, by its nature, it sets the tone in terms of the vision of the incumbent about delivery of socio-economic development programs, and to know where we stand, and also to take maybe to look back in the past year as to what has been achieved, what has been the shortfall. So it's very much unusual for our country at this time of the year not to have the SONA. So many people are saying, do we still need the SONA? And we've heard that others say we just need a person who's going to be taking over to just give us an address, just whether it's from an office and here in the union buildings, or there's no need for pomp and ceremony. So there are those kind of concerns, including the functioning of the state. Most of the senior civil servants that have managed to speak so far, they are very hamstrung. It's an icy kind of a situation like that. They've been iced. There's no communication. They have to take a direction from their political principals. Cabinet ministers themselves, they had to be here. They have to be called from Cape Town to be here at the capital, Pretoria, to also be closer to where things are happening. So you can just imagine how does this also affect in other provinces. There have been plans to have State of the Nation, State of the Province addresses scheduled for next week Fridays. They've been postponed in many of the provinces. So you could just imagine even the cost to it in terms of logistics. How is it affecting even the fiscus of the government ahead of the presentation of the budget, of which we are not even sure it will be presented on the scheduled date on the 21st.
And then, of course, the eyes of the world are watching us at this time. Tshepo, are you seeing international media arriving to cover this?
Definitely, there's been overwhelming kind of inquest from those we know from international broadcasters, especially from Europe, including here in Africa, who really on their way. Most of them have arrived. Some have also started camping around the Pretoria estate. That is the estate that is housing where Mahlamba is the president's residence, including that of the other ministers, including senior security officials and other aides. So there is that interest. They want to really be here to capture the moments. There's interest, as you've seen during Zimbabwe, before President Robert Mugabe finally bowed out of office. They are looking so much interested because this is an African story. There are so much things happening in terms of the change of leadership that has gripped the globe. As we are well aware, South Africa is the biggest economic giant in Africa itself, and very much influential. So everybody has interest to know basically how are we going to be managing this transition, if at all it happens. So no wonder there's a lot of interest from other broadcasters beyond our shores.
Tshepo, thanks so much. We'll leave it there. Tshepo Ikaneng coming to us for some analysis on the latest developments in this political impasse that we are witnessing over the past few days. Tshepo, thanks so much for that.